You know what really gets me emotional? That little kid inside me. The one who looked at a photo of himself at age 6 and saw fear in his own eyes. That same kid today is terrified. Will he ever maximize his life? Will he ever reach his full capacity? Because when it comes down to it, it's only you versus you. No competition, no distractions. Just your own soul against the possibility of what you could be. And that's where most people live their whole life. They never face that question honestly. They never stop long enough to look in the mirror and ask, am I really living to my potential? Or am I just existing, going through the motions, doing the minimum, waiting for something to change? Life, in many ways, is like a video game. Every time you level up, the challenges get harder. But at the same time, your capacity grows. You can't beat level 10 with the same skills you used on level 2. The problem is, most people stop playing at level 5. They plateau. They settle. They never test how much more they could do if they just pushed a little further. But here's the truth I've learned, and it changed everything for me. Potential isn't fixed. It's not some ceiling God placed over you that you're destined never to break. No, potential is capacity, and capacity can grow. The person you are right now can stretch into someone much bigger, much stronger, much more impactful, but only if you stop living like you've already maxed out. So here's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to share with you 3 things that keep people from ever reaching their potential. And if you can break these, if you can flip these mindsets, you'll see doors open in your life that you didn't even know were there. The first thing is this. Most people confuse working hard with working smart. They wear busyness like a badge of honor, but busyness is not the same as progress. You can be the hardest worker in the wrong field and still stay broke. You can be sweating every day and still stay stuck. That's why I had to learn that not all work is equal. Some work multiplies, some work only maintains, and some work actually drains. The second thing that keeps people stuck is a lack of systems. Systems are what help you think less about the little things so you can put your energy on the big things. Without systems, you live in constant chaos, always putting out fires, never building. With systems, your discipline becomes automatic. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter, and you start channeling your energy toward growth. And the third thing, this is where it really hit me, is that people underestimate the power of their environment. Who you spend time with, what you consume, the standards you surround yourself with, all of these either raise your capacity or lower it. You cannot live around small minds and expect to grow big. You cannot feed on negativity and expect to think abundantly. Now let me tie this into a truth I learned from Scripture. In Genesis, God said, "Be fruitful and multiply." That wasn't a casual suggestion. That was a command. And what does it mean? It means that part of your design is expansion, multiplication, growth. You were never meant to shrink. You were never meant to just get by. Think about the parable of the talents. The master gave his servants resources. 2 of them multiplied what they were given. 1 buried it. Who did the master call wicked and lazy? The one who didn't multiply. Not because he lost anything, but because he refused to stretch his potential. That's what God thinks about wasted potential. It's not neutral, it's failure to obey. So I had to ask myself, am I multiplying or am I just maintaining? Am I expanding my capacity or am I burying it in the ground because I'm afraid, because I don't believe I can, because I've convinced myself this is all there is? And I'll be honest with you. For years, I was stuck. I thought my life was maxed out. I believed the lie that my environment dictated my future, that because I lived in a third world country, because opportunities seemed scarce, that was the limit of my potential. But when I learned to break those 3 traps, to stop confusing busyness with progress, to build systems that carried me when discipline felt weak, and to change my environment so it pulled me higher instead of lower, everything began to shift. Your potential isn't fixed. You're not stuck where you are, but you won't reach it by accident. You won't stumble into it. You have to make a conscious choice to stretch, to grow, to live like the person you could become, not just the person you've always been. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll see exactly why you've been stuck, and what you can do today to finally start reaching your full potential. When I first started learning about reaching potential, one of the things that confused me was this word busyness. At first, I thought people were just saying business. And honestly, the two feel similar, right? Both sound like working, grinding, doing stuff. But here's the thing, busyness and business are not the same. Busyness is activity without productivity. It's filling your day with motion, but not progress. Business, on the other hand, is when those actions actually build something, move something forward, or create value. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who wakes up at 7 a.m., checks emails, responds to 50 little messages, scrolls through social media for research, attends 3 unplanned meetings, and by 10 p.m., they're exhausted. They feel like they've been working all day. That's busyness. It looks like effort. It feels like hustle, but at the end of the week, they can't point to anything they've really built. Now compare that to another person. They wake up, review their priorities, and focus on 2 or 3 big moves that matter. Reaching out to key clients, creating a product, solving a real problem. They may look like they're doing less because they're not drowning in activity, but they're actually building. That's business. Here's the trap. Most of us grew up equating hard work with success. And yes, hard work matters, but busyness is sneaky because it disguises itself as hard work. It tricks you into thinking you're moving forward when you're actually running in circles. I used to be that person. I would stay up late, grinding away, exhausted, but my results didn't match the energy I was burning. Then I realized I wasn't building, I was just busy. I was doing things that made me feel productive, but they weren't aligned with growth. And that's why so many people never reach their potential, because they spend their whole life stuck in busyness. They don't have the courage to step back and ask, is this thing I'm doing actually moving me closer to the life I want? Or is it just keeping me occupied? It reminds me of a line I once heard. Don't confuse movement with progress. You can run in place all day, and you'll still be in the same spot. That's busyness. Business is choosing your steps wisely so that every move, even if it's slower, takes you forward. But here's where it gets deeper. Busyness doesn't just waste time, it drains capacity. Every ounce of energy you spend on meaningless activity is energy you don't have for building. And capacity is the very thing you need if you're going to reach your potential. So busyness is not just a distraction, it's a thief. It robs you of the very strength you need to rise higher. Think of it like this. Busyness is like eating junk food. It fills you, but it doesn't nourish you. It tricks your body into feeling full, but leaves you weak. Business, on the other hand, is like eating real healthy food. It might not give the same quick rush, but it strengthens you, builds you, fuels your growth. And here's a biblical principle that makes this so clear. In Luke 10, Jesus visits Martha and Mary. Martha is busy, running around, preparing, serving, stressing. Mary, on the other hand, is sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening, absorbing. Martha complains, Lord, don't you care that my sister left me to do all the work? And what does Jesus say? Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better. That's the difference right there. Martha was busy. Mary was focused. One looked like work, the other looked like rest. But Jesus said Mary chose the better path. Why? Because awareness, clarity, and focus are more powerful than endless activity. Now, let's connect this to reaching your potential. If you stay stuck in busyness, you'll burn out long before you discover what you're capable of. But when you learn to shift from busyness to business, from activity to impact, you free up your energy to actually build the life God called you to. And the crazy thing? When you step out of busyness, it feels like cheating. It feels unfair. Suddenly you're doing less, but accomplishing more. Suddenly you have time to think, time to create, time to grow. Meanwhile, others are still spinning their wheels, bragging about how tired they are. But you're moving ahead. Not because you're smarter or luckier, but because you stopped confusing busyness with real business. That's why this first point is so critical. If you want to reach your potential, you must first escape the trap of busyness. Because busyness will trick you into believing you're already giving your all, when in truth, you've barely scratched the surface of what's possible. So let me ask you right now, are you busy or are you building? Are you spending your life reacting to things, or are you intentionally creating things? Are you Martha, distracted and exhausted, or Mary, focused and present? Once you answer that honestly, you'll see why this point is the foundation of reaching your potential. And this brings us to the next big shift. If busyness is the enemy, then what's the alternative? It's not just working harder or even smarter. It's building something that works for you when you're not working. And that's where systems come in. Systems are the bridge between your potential and your reality. And once you understand this, you'll see why the people who seem to accomplish the most are often the calmest, not the busiest. You know what's funny? The moment I realized I was stuck in busyness, I thought the solution was just working smarter. And yes, that helps. But the real leap forward didn't happen until I discovered something bigger: systems. See, people often think success comes from willpower. They imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and leaders as these superhuman machines who just grind harder than everyone else. But the truth is, they don't rely on willpower as much as you think. They build systems that carry them forward even when their motivation runs out. What's a system? It's a repeatable process that saves you energy, time, and decision-making power. It's like building invisible machines in your life that keep working whether you feel like it or not. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up every morning and argue with yourself about whether you should do it. You don't write it on your to-do list. You don't use up mental energy deciding if today's the day you'll brush. No, it's automatic. That's a system. Once it's locked in, it takes no effort to keep going. Now imagine applying that same principle to your business, your health, your money, or your growth. Imagine if saving money wasn't a debate, it was a system. Imagine if reaching out to new clients wasn't something you dreaded, but something automated into your week. Imagine if learning wasn't optional, but part of your built-in schedule. That's when you stop fighting for consistency, because the system makes consistency the default. Here's the crazy part. Systems are why the people at the top look calm. To the outside world, it feels like they're cheating. Everyone else is drowning in busyness, struggling to remember everything while they glide forward. But it's not cheating. It's systems. Let me share something from science. There's a study on decision fatigue. The more decisions you make in a day, the weaker your willpower gets. That's why people like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg wear the same clothes every day. It's not about fashion, it's about preserving mental energy for bigger decisions. That's a system. It removes unnecessary choices so they can focus on what matters most. Even in the Bible, we see the power of systems. God himself built creation with systems: day and night, seasons, seed time and harvest. Genesis 8:22 says, "As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." That's a divine system. It's dependable, consistent, and it keeps the world running without anyone forcing it. So if even God uses systems, why do we think we can run our lives on pure willpower? I'll tell you why. Because most people confuse motion with progress. They're so used to reacting every day, answering every call, responding to every email, solving every crisis, that they never stop to build a system that prevents the crisis in the first place. It's like constantly bailing water out of a leaking boat instead of fixing the leak. Sure, you feel like you're working hard, but you're not moving forward. Here's where it gets personal. I remember a time when I was juggling so many things: side hustles, projects, personal goals, and I felt like I was always behind. I'd write massive to-do lists thinking that was progress. But the truth was, I was just firefighting. Then one mentor told me something that stuck. If you don't build systems, life will build them for you. And you won't like those systems. And I realized he was right. If you don't create intentional systems, you end up stuck in default ones, systems of distraction, of reaction, of survival. That's why people live check to paycheck. That's why entrepreneurs burn out. That's why talented people never reach their potential. They're trapped in reactive systems instead of proactive ones. So what does this look like practically? Let me break it down. A financial system might be automating savings or investments so money grows without you thinking about it. A business system might be creating a sales funnel that brings clients to you while you sleep. A health system might be prepping meals on Sunday so your week runs smooth. A growth system might be scheduling daily reading or mentorship calls so learning is automatic. Each of these frees up your brain from making small decisions over and over again. And when your brain isn't drained, you can focus on the big stuff: strategy, creativity, vision. That's why systems feel like cheating. Because while most people are relying on shaky willpower, you've built invisible machines around you that keep moving your life forward, no matter what. Let me tie this back to reaching potential. Your potential is like a mountain. Without systems, every day feels like climbing uphill, slipping back, trying again. With systems, it's like building stairs into the mountain. Step by step, consistently, you go higher. And after a while, people look at you and say, "How did you get so far ahead?" And the truth is, it wasn't one giant leap. It was a system carrying you the whole way. Even the Apostle Paul, in 1 Corinthians 9:27, talked about discipline. "I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should." That's system language. He didn't say he relied on feeling motivated every day. He said he built training, repetition, structure, consistency. That's what carried him. So here's your big takeaway. If you want to reach your potential, stop relying on willpower and start building systems. Build routines, habits, structures that carry you even when you're tired, distracted, or unmotivated. Because if you don't, you'll always fall back into busyness. And once you've built systems, something powerful happens. You free up your mind and energy to focus on higher levels of growth. You stop wasting energy on what's predictable, and you start pouring it into what's possible. Now that we've laid this out, the next natural question is, what do you do with the extra energy and clarity systems give you? That's where the next point comes in. It's about conserving energy for the long game, instead of burning it all on short-term wins. And once you see this, you'll understand why some people sprint fast but burn out, while others build legacies. Here's something I realized on my own journey. Potential isn't about how fast you sprint today. It's about how long you can keep building without breaking. Too many people start strong, but they don't last. They push all their energy into short bursts, but because they don't know how to conserve energy, they never reach the bigger picture. Think of it like running a marathon. If you run the first mile as if it's a sprint, you'll collapse before you finish the race. It doesn't matter how strong you looked at the start. What matters is how you manage your energy for the long game. That's life. That's business. That's building wealth. That's walking in your purpose. Here's the trap. We live in a culture obsessed with speed. Everyone wants to go viral overnight, build a business in a month, become an instant success. But success doesn't come overnight. It comes over time. What really matters is not how fast you start, but how consistently you can show up over years, even decades. When I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I thought it was all about going as hard as I could, as fast as I could. I wanted to make money quick, see results fast, prove myself instantly. But that mentality nearly broke me. I was exhausted, burned out, discouraged, because I wasn't building for the long game. I was trying to win a sprint. Then I learned something powerful. Conserving energy is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not about doing less. It's about doing smarter so that you can keep doing more over time. And this is where the systems we talked about earlier connect beautifully. When you build systems, you conserve energy. You don't waste willpower on repetitive decisions. You don't waste brain power on distractions. You free up capacity for the things that truly matter. That's how you make sure your energy lasts for the long game. Science backs this up too. Your brain runs on glucose, and every decision you make burns energy. That's why people crash mentally in the afternoon. Not because they're lazy, but because their decision-making energy has been drained. But when you conserve your energy, by automating, by prioritizing, by simplifying, you're not just protecting yourself from burnout, you're extending your ability to stay in the game long enough to win. Now let's tie this back to the Bible. Look at the story of Joseph. When Joseph was given his dream as a teenager, it didn't come to pass immediately. He went through betrayal, slavery, prison. But through all those years, he conserved energy by focusing on faithfulness instead of fighting battles he couldn't win. He managed his energy by stewarding what was in front of him. He didn't waste energy complaining, blaming, or quitting. And when the time came, he had the strength and maturity to step into leadership and change the destiny of a nation. That's the long game. Think also about farmers. The Bible says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Farming is the perfect picture of conserving energy. You don't get a harvest the day after you plant. You have to water, wait, protect, and stay consistent. If you burn out or quit in the middle, you lose everything. But if you pace yourself, if you conserve your energy for the long game, the harvest is inevitable. Now here's the mistake most people make. They spend all their energy on what's urgent instead of what's important. They waste energy fighting distractions, chasing quick wins, trying to impress people. Then they wonder why they're exhausted before they've even touched their true potential. So let me ask you, where are you burning energy on things that don't matter? Where are you sprinting in circles instead of pacing yourself for the long race? For me, the breakthrough came when I learned to say no. No to distractions. No to short-term dopamine. No to opportunities that looked shiny but didn't align with my calling. Every no was me conserving energy so that I could say yes to the right things for the long game. This is also why focus is so powerful. When you focus, you conserve energy. Instead of scattering it across 100 directions, you channel it into one direction. And that's what creates breakthroughs. Remember, where attention goes, energy flows. If you spread your attention too thin, your energy leaks everywhere. But if you laser focus, your energy compounds in one direction, and suddenly you're moving faster than people who are running harder. Here's a personal example. When I finally committed to building my business online, I stopped trying to chase every opportunity. I focused on one product, one strategy, one system, and because of that, my energy multiplied. Suddenly, the same hours of work produced 10 times the results. Why? Because I conserved energy by aligning it. And this is where potential really comes alive. Reaching potential is not about exhausting yourself. It's about conserving your energy for the things that multiply. It's about building for the long game. It's about recognizing that the marathon is won by those who can keep running, not just those who start fast. So if you feel stuck, if you feel tired, if you feel like you've been working so hard but not moving forward, maybe it's not that you need more effort. Maybe it's that you need to conserve your energy for the right things, the long-term things, the multiplying things. Because when you do, you'll stop burning out in busyness, and you'll start building a life that lasts. And this sets us up perfectly for the next point, how your environment either drains or multiplies your energy. Because conserving energy isn't just about what you do, it's also about who and what surrounds you. One of the most overlooked truths about potential is this: your environment will either shrink you or stretch you. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how disciplined you are, or even how motivated you feel in the moment. If you spend enough time in the wrong environment, it will pull you down. Because your environment isn't neutral. It's shaping you, whether you notice it or not. Think about it like this. A seed can have the full potential to grow into a massive tree. But if you plant that seed in dry, cracked soil with no sunlight, it won't grow. The seed wasn't broken, the environment was. On the other hand, if you plant the same seed in rich soil, with water and sunlight, it grows almost automatically. It becomes everything it was meant to be, not because the seed changed, but because the environment supported its potential. That's you. That's me. That's all of us. Let's get practical. Have you ever noticed how being around certain people makes you feel drained, small, or stuck? And then being around other people makes you feel alive, creative, and bold? That's environment at work. Energy is contagious. If you surround yourself with fear, negativity, and limitation, it's only a matter of time before you start thinking, feeling, and acting the same way. When I was younger, I didn't understand this. I thought I could just push through with willpower. But I realized something powerful. You will never rise above the standards of the environment you tolerate. If your circle is content with mediocrity, you will unconsciously settle there too. If your environment rewards busyness instead of results, you'll burn out like everyone else. If your culture glorifies survival instead of growth, you'll keep surviving, but never thriving. And this is why so many people never reach their potential. It's not that they lack ability. It's that they live in an environment that stunts their growth. They're like seeds stuck in bad soil. Now let me tie this to a biblical perspective. In Genesis, God told Abraham to leave his country, his people, and his father's household and go to the land he would show him. Why? Because Abraham's destiny required a new environment. He couldn't step into his potential if he stayed in the old place. God had to separate him from the environment that would limit him. Look also at David. Before he became king, he was just a shepherd boy, overlooked even by his own family. But when Samuel anointed him, everything changed. Not because David suddenly got stronger, but because he was brought into a new environment of calling and preparation. His environment shifted, and so did his potential. Jesus himself chose his environment carefully. He surrounded himself with 12 disciples, not because they were perfect, but because he was intentional about who he spent his time with. He also left towns where there was no faith, because environment matters. He even said, "A prophet has no honor in his own country." Why? Because environment affects potential. Science confirms this too. There's something called social proof, the psychological tendency to mirror the people around us. That's why habits spread through friend groups. If your friends are overweight, you're more likely to be overweight. If your friends are disciplined, you're more likely to be disciplined. Environment quietly shapes your reality. So here's the question: who and what are you surrounding yourself with? Are you in an environment that multiplies your energy or drains it? Are you around people who speak life or people who always speak fear? Do your surroundings remind you of your vision or distract you from it? For me, the shift happened when I intentionally changed my inputs. I couldn't change my country or circumstances overnight, but I could change my environment by what I fed my mind. I started reading books, listening to mentors, consuming content that lifted my standard instead of lowering it. Even though I was physically in one place, mentally I had shifted into a new environment, and that opened doors for me. Here's the key. Your environment isn't just physical. It's also mental and spiritual. What you read, what you watch, what you listen to, what you speak, all of it forms the environment of your soul. And your soul environment will always leak into your external reality. That's why Paul wrote in Romans 12:2, "Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That's environment. He was saying, don't let the world system be your soil. Renew your mind, change your environment inside, and your life outside will follow. And here's the amazing part. Once you shift your environment, your potential expands. Suddenly, things you thought were impossible start to look normal. Goals that used to scare you start to feel reachable. Why? Because your environment raised your standard. It pulled you higher. So if you want to reach your potential, you need to take inventory of your environment. Who's around you? What are you feeding your mind? What standards have you unconsciously accepted as normal? And most importantly, are you willing to walk away from environments that no longer serve your destiny? Because until you do, you'll always be like that seed in bad soil, full of potential, but never growing into it. But when you change your environment, you won't just grow, you'll multiply. And this leads us perfectly into the final point. Potential is not reached through one-time effort, but through consistency, the boring fundamentals repeated daily. Because once you have focus, systems, energy conservation, and the right environment, the last piece is consistency that compounds. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. Reaching your potential isn't about some magic breakthrough moment. It's not about one big risk or one life-changing event. It's about the small, boring fundamentals repeated day after day, long enough to compound. And I get it. That doesn't sound exciting. People want secrets, shortcuts, hacks. They want to believe there's some hidden formula that will unlock everything instantly. But the truth is, success comes from mastering the boring basics. Think about athletes. Bruce Lee once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." That's consistency. That's mastery. Potential is not reached by dabbling in everything. It's reached by repeating the right things until they become second nature. The boring fundamentals are like planting seeds every day. One seed looks small, almost insignificant. But if you plant it daily, in time, you'll have a garden. And if you keep planting, you'll have a forest. Most people quit before the garden even sprouts. They get bored, distracted, or discouraged, and they stop. That's why they never see their potential, not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked consistency. Let's connect this with real life. In business, the fundamentals might be following up with customers, improving your product, managing your money wisely. None of that looks glamorous, but over time, it builds something unshakable. In personal growth, the fundamentals might be reading daily, journaling, praying, meditating. Again, not glamorous, but these build inner strength that compounds. In health, it's eating right, moving daily, sleeping enough. Simple, boring, but powerful. I'll be honest, this is where I struggled the most early on. I loved chasing new ideas, getting excited about big visions, but sticking with the basics felt slow. Until I realized, the boring fundamentals are the only path to the extraordinary. You can't skip them, you can't outsource them, you can't shortcut them. You either do them or you stay stuck. Even in scripture, we see this pattern. The Israelites were told to gather manna every morning. It wasn't exciting, it wasn't glamorous, but it was daily provision. When Naaman the leper was told to dip in the Jordan 7 times to be healed, it felt too boring, too ordinary. But when he obeyed, he was restored. Jesus taught his disciples to pray daily. Give us this day our daily bread. Not once in a lifetime bread. Daily bread. Why? Because consistency builds strength. And here's the paradox. Consistency feels slow, but it creates momentum that feels unstoppable. It's like pushing a heavy flywheel. At first, it barely moves. But as you push every day, the momentum builds. And eventually, the wheel turns so easily that it feels like it's moving by itself. That's what happens when you commit to boring fundamentals. At first, it feels like nothing's happening. But one day, you wake up and realize you've become a different person. Let me tell you something I experienced personally. When I decided to build my business seriously, I created simple daily fundamentals. Read, reach out to people, follow up, create content. Day after day, it felt small, sometimes discouraging, but I kept going. And after a while, the results compounded. Orders started coming in, customers multiplied, and soon what felt impossible became normal. That's the power of consistency. So here's the real question. Are you willing to commit to the boring fundamentals? Or are you still chasing shortcuts? Because shortcuts look faster, but they always cost more in the long run. Fundamentals look slower, but they always multiply in the end. Think of a tree. You don't see anything above ground for a while because the roots are growing deep. But once the roots are established, the tree shoots up strong and tall. If you quit before the roots are ready, you never see the fruit. But if you stay consistent, your potential breaks through the surface and grows beyond what you imagined. This is how potential is unlocked. Not by luck, not by one-time effort, but by consistency. The boring fundamentals practice daily until they become mastery. And that's the conclusion of this entire journey we've been walking through. Focus separates you from distractions. Systems carry you when willpower runs out. Conserving energy ensures you last for the long game. Environment shapes and multiplies your capacity. And boring fundamentals turn potential into reality. One leads to exhaustion. The other leads to expansion. Busyness drains you. Systems sustain you. Distractions scatter you. Focus multiplies you. Quitting keeps you stuck. Consistency unlocks you. So, if you've been wondering how to reach your potential, the answer is simple. Start with the fundamentals. Choose 1 or 2 simple disciplines. Repeat them daily. Protect your environment. Conserve your energy. Build systems around you. And never confuse busyness with business. Because one day, if you stay faithful to the boring fundamentals, you'll wake up and realize you've become the person you always dreamed you could be.